Evening. My name is Lacey Hawkins. I'm a social studies teacher here at BNL, and I'm also president of the North Lawrence Education Association. I want to thank you and welcome you to tonight's 2022 NLCS School Board Forum sponsored by the North Lawrence Education Association. I also want to thank the candidates for their interest in serving on the school board and for joining us here tonight to share their platforms and answer questions submitted by the community. From the submissions, 12 questions were selected by a team of NLEA teachers. In the selection process, some questions were omitted and others were combined or rephrased. Our MC tonight is NLEA Vice President Logan Feltz, who will explain the format for tonight's forum.
Welcome. First off, we would like to ask those that are in attendance to please silence their phones so they're not going off and distracting these individuals as they present. Our rules for tonight are as follows. Questions directed to specific members or specific candidate forums are not allowed, and during the question process that was covered. The forum will begin with the opportunity for each candidate to introduce themselves for 45 seconds. Candidate responses will be limited to 45 seconds during the question section, and microphone will be cut off when that 45 second is reached, and there will also be a bell that rings to let them know. There will be 12 questions during the forum. After the 6th question, we will take an intermission for the individuals to be able to stretch their legs. Each of the 12 candidates will have the opportunity to be first to answer a question. All candidates will have an opportunity to answer a question that is asked first. Candidates also will give closing remarks for 1 minute at the conclusion of the question section. Let's meet the candidates. First off is Kirsten Collier from District 1.
Hello everyone, my name is Kirsten Collier. I was born and raised here in Bedford, and I attended Parkview, Bedford Junior High, and BNL. After that, I got my undergrad degree from IU, and then I went to law school at IU, and then after graduation, I chose to stay here in Lawrence County and work and raise a family. And we live in Williams, close to where I grew up. I've been devoted my entire career to public service. I was a deputy prosecutor here for 19 years, and in that role, I worked closely with our children, families, and schools. Becoming an NLCS board member was just a natural extension of my desire to help the kids in our community. We've got a lot of positive in our schools. We've got great teachers, great staff, great students. I want to continue to put our kids first and always look for ways we can improve opportunities for them and ways to increase their academic successes. Thank you.
Thank you. Also from District 1, Craig Gotsey.
Good evening. My name is Craig Gotsey. I'm running for NLCS District 1 school board seat. I'm a 1998 graduate of BNL and have lived in Lawrence County all but 5 years of my life, of which were spent serving in the United States Marine Corps Air Station, Cherry Point, North Carolina. I've worked in various positions at NSWC Crane and CAAA since 2005. I've been married to my wife, Autumn, for nearly 21 years, and we have 2 daughters, aged 19 and 11. My reasoning for running for school board is to bring transparency and sense of service back to corporation administration. My hope is to answer all your questions and earn your vote in this November's election.
Thank you. Also running in District 1, Jason Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Jason Johnson, and I'm running for District 1. My wife Sarah and I have been married since March of 2008. We have 2 children, Liam, who is 12, and Amelia will soon be 9. I've been following the school board since the talks of the consolidation started, and like most, felt it was handled poorly. There's been no transparency with the current administration. Change is desperately needed. There must be individuals that want to be on a board and want to do what's right and make the right decisions for the schools and make NLCS the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to District 2, Adam Parsley.
Good evening. My name's Adam Parsley, and I'm running for District 2. I was born and raised in Bedford. My wife Becky and I have 3 kids, one each at B&L, BMS, and Olytic Elementary. I graduated here from B&L in 1995 and went on to Rose-Hulman, where I earned my bachelor's degree in applied optics and later a master's in engineering management. My wife has a social degree from IU. I've been at Crane 25 years and had many leadership experiences there. I led a division with a $60 million budget, approximately 200 people, and about a dozen different buildings. I've interviewed and hired many people. I've fired a few. I've managed aging facilities. I've set strategic goals. I've worked in near-term improvement plans. I've worked annual budget processes, and I understand the concept of different pots of money. I've navigated the red tape, and I know federal bureaucracy. Appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Also from District 2, Michael Patton.
Hi, I'm Michael Patton. I'm running for District 2. I'm married. I have 4 kids that are in North Lawrence Community Schools. 2 of them are autistic, and that's what made me run for District 2. I've lived in Bedford for 22 years now. Graduated from Paoli. I think that about sums it up.
Thank you. In District 3, Tony Rock Fleetwood.
Good evening. My name's Tony Rob Fleetwood, born and raised here in Lawrence County. I'm running for District 3. I have 5 children, 14 grandchildren. I've worked here at North Lawrence, retired for 30-some years. I've working now for my nephew, TNT Underground and Contracting. I have a lawn care business, Fleetwood & Sons Lawn Care, and I hope I get your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next from District 3, Ty Hooton.
Good evening. My name's Ty Hooton. I'm a 1995 grad of B&L. I also graduated from the North Lawrence Career Center. I have a wife who's a teacher at Lincoln Elementary School. I have a son who's a 4th grader at Lincoln and another son who's a freshman at B&L. I have an engineering degree from IUPUI. I also have a master's degree in business administration from Ball State University. I have a lot of leadership experience at NSWC Crane. I've led an organization of 50 people, and really I have a lot of experience in leadership, and I want to bring this community together. I think we've had too much of a distraction, and I want to bring the entire community behind NLCS. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, District 3, Scott King.
Good evening. My name is Scott King, and I'm running for the school board because of the damage to our corporation, through the actions of the superintendents, and because the current school board has proven they lack the ability to lead. If I'm elected, I will try to stop the damage and direct the corporation on a path to success. I'm motivated by what is in the best interest of the students, teachers, and staff. My decisions will be based upon real data and evidence. I will listen to and work with the impacted stakeholders, and I will work to rebuild both the reputation of the corporation and the trust between the school board and the community. To be clear, the situation is serious. We have a lot of problems to solve. If we don't solve them, we will continue to lose teachers, and we will continue to lose students.
Thank you. Now from District 3, Robert Payne.
Good evening. My name is Rob Payne. I'm a graduate of B&L University, B&L High School, graduate of Indiana University. I spent 10 years teaching math and science at Seymour High School, and for the last 9 years, I've been working with the Indiana Department of Financial Institutions. My wife and I have 2 children, ages 9 and 7 in Lincoln. And I'm running for school board because I have concerns about our current state and our future direction as a corporation.
Thank you. Next from District 3, Autumn Ray.
Good evening, my name is Autumn Red, and I'm running for District 3. I'm a lifelong resident of Bedford. I'm a 1993 graduate of B&L. I'm married to Gary Ray, who is also the middle school football coach right now. We have 4 children who have all went through North Lawrence schools. 3 of them which have graduated. 1 is currently a junior at B&L. I have been with kids my entire life. For 23 years, I owned and operated my own preschool here in Bedford. And for the past 7 years, I have overseen the B&L Football Touchdown Club, which is the parent group for our football team. I love our community, and I want to be in our school system and on our school board for growth, unity, and just success of our schools. I love NLCS. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to District 5, Kamal Gervis.
My name is Kamal Gertis. I am the incumbent currently on District 5 on the school board. Lived in Bedford for over 40 years of my life here, and went through elementary school, middle school, and high school. Graduated in 1984. After which I went to med school, came back with my wife to practice with my father here in Bedford. Have 3 kids, 2 of which have graduated from B&L. One's in engineering, one's in pre-med, and my youngest now is a sophomore in B&L this time. So, of course, my goal at this point is to continue giving our kids the education they need to reach the goals they want to reach. And again, as others have said, this next phase is to try to bring unity between the community and the school board, and to bring, at this point, bring trust back to the school board. And I think it's going to take some work. That's why I'm here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Lastly, from District 5, Barbara Miller.
Hello, I'm Barbara Miller, married to Lenny. We have 3 kids, Tyson, Casey, and Craig. They all went through Olytic and B&L. We have 7 grandkids, 2 are at Dollins, 3 are in the Jasper school system. I went to Shawswick, and through my freshman year, suffered through consolidation and graduated here at B&L in 1977. I am employed at Edward Jones. We own City Loop Power. I have volunteered at, run the elementary tourney, coached basketball, coached track at OMS and Dollins for the last 35 years. I feel our current administration is working from the top down, and we need to work from the bottom up. I'm for open doors, smaller class sizes, competitive staff salaries, and for what is best for our students.
Thank you. Next, we'll move into our question section. I will read each question, and it will also be displayed on the board. We will start at the far end with Kirsten Collier. Will be first to answer this question. What is your vision for NLCS? Give one concrete thing you would like to see accomplished, and how your being on the board would help get us there.
I've got a lot of visions. I think an important thing to do is we need to start recognizing the greatness that we have here. As I said in my opening, we've got great kids, we've got great students, we've got great staff. And when I was on the board earlier, we showcased that a lot. Even like at our board meetings, we would have different things going on, coming into the boardroom and celebrate. And we need to start doing that. We need to be more positive and celebrate the good that we have. There's way more positive than negative in our school system, and we have got to start celebrating that. That's just one of our visions. I've got a lot. Obviously, we have 45 seconds. That's really not a lot of time, but again, we need to start celebrating the positive and praising our students and our staff and our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now coming to the mic for the same question, Mr. Godsey.
think something that I've heard from most people that I've talked to, mainly teachers or support staff, is seeking consultation from veteran teachers and administrators with acceptable qualifications throughout our region and state to design a more robust hiring and vetting process, as well as recruitment and retention for not only our teachers, but our support staff. We have schools that have minimal custodial work, food service workers, not really a whole lot of support for those individuals. We know what's happening to the teachers, those discussions that need to be held. I think that is the primary thing on my list, is to stop talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now coming to the microphone, Mr. Johnson.
I'd like to bring NLCS back to the great school that it can be, and it was. Finding and retaining new teachers while working under the veteran teachers that we have still with us. I know North Lawrence can be the best. When I was in Mitchell, that's all I heard. North Lawrence has all the opportunities, and I'd like to see us get back to that.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Parsley.
My vision for NLCS is to create a climate where we pull the best out of our students by enabling the best out of our teachers and staff. I think we need to work sincerely to establish a much better climate in order that we could do that. One concrete thing that I would absolutely make a priority is increasing our teachers' pay and teacher compensation. That's teachers, that's aides, that's everyone's got a frontline job with the students. We have got to prioritize that above all else when it comes to how we treat our staff and our teachers. They'll work for us. They love our students. They will do their very best. They'll give their all, and we owe them the best climate that we can give them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Patton.
To get North Lawrence back to where it should be, like it was in 2001 when I went to BNL. Stop the wasteful spending, and hire teachers and pay them what they should be paid. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Fleetwood.
My vision for North Lawrence schools is to make the schools better for the students, make the schools safer for all the kids that come to school, and for the teachers have more money, custodians have more money, all the support staff to enjoy to come to work every day, like I did here when I was here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Hooten.
My vision for NLCS is to increase the organizational culture within the organization. I think you got to do that by addressing the problems. And to do that, you have to baseline the organization. To get to where you're going, you have to know where you're at. So the first thing I would do is try to do an independent survey so that we know where the organization's at, so that we can measure the progress moving forward. Two things that I would try to address is the increase in teacher salaries, and also to increase the educational opportunities for our children, specifically in areas like high ability. Thanks.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. King.
Leaders lead people. Visions lead leaders. I do have a vision for NLCS. My vision is to establish a culture of excellence so that everything we do has purpose. Within that vision, we must have a first-class administration, our people with character and integrity in every position. We must achieve a superior workforce, one that is highly trained and highly motivated. We must enhance our educational program to make it robust and flexible to match the need of every student. We must maintain our facilities, keep them safe, functional, clean, and pristine. We must establish an identity, one that results in a positive reputation. And we must earn the trust of the community and reestablish a strong relationship.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Payne.
My vision for NLCS is to be able to justify the C in NLCS. I think we've lost almost a third of our community so far, and I don't think we need to lose any more. So one thing that I would try to do is go in the direction and take the actions to reestablish our community and regain them as part of our community and put them back into NLCS.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Ray.
Well, my main vision for NLCS is I want us to be more unified and successful. We need healing as a whole. I want people to look at NLCS and be like, wow, they have got so much to give and so much opportunity. We want to go there. As far as me being on the board, I think I'm very positive. I think I'm a very encouraging person. I will be 100% supportive of our staff, our students, our teachers, the support staff, all of them. I just want everyone to come together as a whole and just be a better place to be.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Dr. Gerges.
Our school system, for the most part, is as strong as our teachers that we have in our current school system. Essentially, we can only provide the best education for our kids if we have the best teachers here giving them that education. We have failed in giving them the support that they need, and we have failed in giving them the salaries that they deserve. Over the last few years, our goal was to try and reduce our expenditures in order to help provide those teachers the salaries that they deserve. And our hope in the future is to provide for them a climate in which there's open dialogue and discussion between us as a board, superintendents, and the teachers. And we're currently on the precipice of giving the schools, teaching staff, the largest raise that they've had in the last 20 years. And our hope is to continue to do so and also allow us to help recruit better teachers for our future, for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to the microphone, Mrs. Miller.
My vision for NLCS is to be a happy place. Parents happy with our system, kids happy with their schools, teachers and staff happy to be here and work here and be teaching and working with our students. Our teachers and staff earning competitive wages, kids learning, and our school board grades raised with the state. We should be the school that everybody wants to send their kids to, the system that all the teachers want to work at.
Thank you. We'll move on to the second question now. Several candidates have expressed the desire to remove the current superintendent. If you were to accomplish this, what then? What will be your plan?
That's really a tough question. What does happen after you fire somebody? Who goes with them? Do you have to replace those individuals as well? How much administration do you have left? have to find a qualified interim superintendent. Do you go out and think you're smart enough to find that individual on your own as board members, or do you seek consultation? Who do you seek consultation from? As a public, are you expecting us to know these things going in day one? I wouldn't. We would need a little bit of time to make that happen. I don't know that it could happen in 1 to 3 months. Hopefully it could. But your intern is going to set up everything that happens in those two remaining years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Johnson.
Seeking a replacement will be a difficult task. It's going to be probably one of the harder tasks to get accomplished. Seeking the right individual, there are candidates out there, is just tracking them down. I don't know, maybe this one is a difficult question. Maybe pull his, take some of the tasks away from the current one until we find a replacement. I don't know. That this is a difficult question.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Parsley.
I believe the next step after, if we were to remove the superintendent, would be to install an interim superintendent, one who would not be vying for the job permanently. I believe then the announcement, or the position would need to be announced and selected competitively, as I believe most positions within NLCS would need to be just as competitively selected. I believe the interim from the time that, of removal needs to help the board set up the strategic guideline or strategic goals and the near-term tactical objectives that the board and the new superintendent. I don't think this is going to be a hard as a job to fill the role as what you might think. Turning an organization around is a very coveted job in the CEO realm. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be eyeing this position, looking to step in and help us achieve greatness. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Patton.
So removing Dr. Mungle, yes, that is one of the priorities. Coming up with the money to pay for it, that's what's gonna be the hard part. If elected board member, we have to find a way to buy out his contract without costing North Lawrence any more money than what they already spend. Find an interim person to run it. The other option is just strip Dr. Mungle of his powers until a replacement can be found.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Fleetwood.
I think the first thing we would have to do, the board-elect would have to meet together and talk about how to resolve this problem and find information from the State Board of Education and see what we would have to do fix this problem. And if we do have an assistant superintendent, that he takes over and take powers of the North Lawrence schools and do the best he can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Hoot.
There's a few things that I think need to happen before Dr. Mungle could be removed. One is a plan. That plan would include who the interim superintendent is, the timeline to do that, and as a board, we'd have to establish priorities to what the new superintendent, the qualities that we would like. I also think you would have to baseline the organization before you can get rid of Dr. Mungle. You have to know where you're at before you can know where you're going. The only way to do that is to provide an independent assessment so that we know where the organization's at. And then we establish those priorities to be able to select a new superintendent. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Mr. King.
NLCS is not operating under a strategic plan. This is unacceptable and part of our problem. We must stop operating in the crisis-to-crisis mode and develop a plan and concrete steps to achieve them. And we must have metrics. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Our plan should start with finding an interim to fill a spot and then start looking for a replacement with the help of the interim and the rest of the school board. We should start these other things while in the process of finding a replacement. We should look at lessons learned from the consolidation. We should do a deep dive evaluation of the corporate finances and assets. We should review the salaries of all of our employees and plan to correct inequalities and deficiencies and remedy the situation I don't miss.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Payne.
After we remove the current superintendent, I think the only direction to do or to go is to find an interim, replace him. But we need to reestablish, I believe, district lines. We have too many elementary school children on a bus for over an hour. And then I think before the next school year, you'd have to reopen and fully utilize all the buildings that we do have. And that means reinstituting 2 junior high schools.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mrs. Ray.
I feel, before you can even ask yourself this question, I feel that you need to actually be on the board. You need to be in there, and until you're in there and you learn the finances and you learn the policies and you learn, public funding, you cannot actually formulate an opinion on this. I mean, what needs to be done, and you can't base all these decisions you have on what you hear on social media. Until you're in the board and on the board and know exactly what's going on, you cannot sit here and make an exact judgment on anything. The superintendent turnover in Indiana right now is so high, if anybody has even looked into that. But I do know if it happens, we need to have an intern that would certainly need to be in place to take care of our kids.
Thank you. Dr. Gerges?
I think Autumn's correct on that. Before we jump to conclusions about, getting rid or firing our superintendent, I think it's important to work with him for a while, see his heart. This is a man who really loves our kids, and I know that you don't see that, but social media has been able to paint such a negative aspect of our board, and they don't see at all the good that is done by our superintendent. All we see, it seems like social media is just constantly providing negativity about everything that we do. He's a good man, and there are things that need to be changed and corrected, and he does need some guidance. But the reality is, if this were to occur, there's actually a process in place using Indiana State Board, or Indiana School Board Association, Indiana Department of Education. There are lists of candidates that are available. You go through an interview process, you bring them in, see who will work best for our school system. But I think first you need to spend time to meet the superintendent first. Thanks.
Mrs. Miller, next to the microphone.
Okay, if this is what the board would choose to do, options would have to be examined as far as buying out his contract, or if there were other options that were available to the board. An interim supervisor would have to be brought in, hopefully one that's retired and not looking for the job. This person should be able to help us with the criteria that would be needed to look for a new one and help with the interview process. It's going to be a long, drawn-out process, but I think the board can handle it.
Thank you. Next to the microphone is Mrs. Collier.
So I was trying to think of the right word, I guess funny isn't it? But so 4 years ago when I ran, this was the exact premise that many board members ran on. We want to get rid of the superintendent, we want to get rid of the superintendent. Well, that's what happened, we got rid of the superintendent, and this is what we got. So I don't know if it's one of those be careful what you wish for kind of situations, but there's way more that goes into it than just finding a replacement. As Autumn mentioned, they're hard to find. I don't know how many applicants we had when the past superintendent was let go. A couple, maybe, and that it's hard to choose from. So it is something that's, this is a serious matter. You can't just make split decisions. Again, as Autumn said, you have to be on the board and understand the finances, understand what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question for Mr. Johnson, starting this one. What would be your top 3 priorities for the NLCS budget? What would be your top 3 priorities for the NLCS budget?
I think number 1 would be to compensate our hardworking teachers, paying them what they deserve. I'm not saying that because my wife is a teacher. I've talked to several teachers. They're not getting the pay that they deserve. Getting the right curriculum and getting a good quality curriculum for the students. Some of this curriculum shouldn't be taught to certain age kids. The third would be to adopt a purchase order system for excess spending.
Next to the microphone, Mr. Parsley.
My top 3 priorities with respect to the budget would be certainly to pursue higher teacher pay. Supposedly that's coming. We've seen a lot of promises, and we've not seen much delivery so far. I look forward to that coming. I hope that's the case. But those are the big rocks that we have to put into the budget before the small things falling around. Next, we have to reconstitute special education. Special education has been effectively demolished in this school corporation. And the special educators that we need are fewer and farther in between than even our conventional teachers. Finally, our facilities and the resources that we give our teachers. Our facilities always need maintenance, but there are some critical shortages that we need to see about, shore up. And then the teachers are spending their own money on various different things that they need for the classrooms, and we've got to get them taken care of.
Next to the microphone, Mr. Patton.
So the first priority would be raising teachers' pay. The second priority for the budget is to bring in the wasteful spending on the schools' credit card accounts, for one. Getting the maintenance done at the schools that we still maintain. And get rid of what's left of Springville to the academy, so we don't have to spend the money to replace the septic tanks and stuff.
Next up, Mr. Fleetwood.
One thing is first is the teachers' wages raised where they need to be. The second thing, make sure the building and all buildings at schools are safe, the structures are safe, and safety of our kids. And Third is our kids. Our kids are the most important thing in the school system, in the North Lawrence schools. Make sure the buildings are tight, fit, our teachers paid well to let our kids enjoy coming to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Hooten.
There's your three pretty easy answers for me. Teacher pay, support staff, and training for them. The addition of high building and an increase in special education support. And I think we need to continue to reduce the operating costs within NLCS so that we can continue to improve our financial situation moving forward.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. King.
I hope you know it's a trend here. Excuse me. Budget is normally the number one concern of the school board, and this year things have changed just a little bit. But I agree the number one need is to look at our pay for our teachers. There's a lot of inequality in there. We need to make sure we can adjust that. We also need to look at the pay for our aides and other support staff, see what's been done to their pay and then their adjustments on the vacation. And the last thing then, obviously, is the special ed department. It has been decimated, and we need to correct that as soon as possible.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Payne.
I have a little bit more redundancy for you. Top three would be staff compensation, special education and curriculum, and making sure that our buildings are operational.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mrs. Ray.
So I believe the biggest and best improvement would be our teachers and support staff to get raises, obviously, and I think with our savings that we have occurred over the past 2 or 3 years, that this will happen, I'm certain. Another place is special education. We need to further our special education options, and I also think our maintenance and our safety. Hopefully, since we're a small town, nothing will ever happen, but I think with our safety issues around the United States, I think to vamp that up a little bit would help also.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Dr. Gerges.
So first and foremost, as all is spoken, we need to give adequate and improved salaries to our teaching staff and support staff. They're definitely underpaid at this point. We recognize that. Secondly, we do need to revitalize and rebuild our special needs section of our school system. That's something that's been lacking and has really required much more attention than we've been able to give it in the last few years. And thirdly, we need to offer our kids better academic and opportunities, both in the career center format as well as our school and education system, so our kids can get and exceed their expectations and get to the dreams that they've planned for.
Thank you. Next to the mic, Ms. Miller.
My top priorities, just like everybody else, we need to raise the teacher and staff pay to make them comparable with everybody else in our area. Not just a stipend, but actually give them a pay raise. My next would be get students to return to NLCS so that that money comes into our budget, so we have that to work with and add to our budget. My third would be to retire debt as we could and quit looking for projects like solar panels to spend our money on.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Carter.
So I I didn't vote for consolidation because I didn't agree with the process and the speed at which it came to us. But it happened, and because of it, though, now that's been a couple years, we are actually starting to see a savings. And that is what we are planning to increase salary and benefits, and we're able to do that because of that savings. Another area that's been mentioned as well is the safety of our schools. We've done a great job of, with our SROs and with cameras on the buses, more cameras in the schools, and stuff, but there's obviously more we can do. And then also I think we should put more money towards programs like our Gateway Academy, our alternative school, STEM, robotics, the high ability program, the early college program, and things like that that can just better help our students.
Thank you. And last to answer this question, Mr. Godsey.
You would think going last would be the best, but it's really not, because you say everything everybody else already said. You're only remembered if you bring something else to the table. So, of course, teacher salary, let's hire some more. Let's hire some more support staff. Something I haven't heard said. Where's the support staff? Food service workers, custodians, maintenance, transportation. Where are those people? We need more of them. I do remember hearing somebody say something about an hour-long bus ride. That's an absolute for somebody that lives 2 miles away from the school. It's kind of crazy. Curriculum, I think that's something that should be invested in. My daughter's at Needmore, the robotics club, that is excellent. They went to, I believe, nationwide finals last year. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to question 4, first to answer will be Mr. Adam Parsley. Question 4, as a board member, what do you see as the role of the board in relation to the superintendent? As a board member, what do you see as the role of the board in relation to the superintendent?
The board is the boss. They guide and direct the superintendent. The superintendent reports to the board, and the board reports to the constituents and the voters. The board cannot micromanage the superintendent. We need someone we can trust. We need someone that can carry out the strategic objectives, the overarching themes that the board wants to address, and the board cannot be, it should not be, in the micromanagement business and taking part every single budget or every single plan. But the board has to establish a level of trust with the superintendent that what it sets out as its goals and objectives will be followed through. I don't believe we've seen that with this board and this superintendent. I think there's been too much buddy-buddy.
Next to the microphone, Mr. Patton.
No, the board cannot micromanage the superintendent, but the board has to be part of the decisions that the superintendent makes. There's a lot of things the superintendent that we have now does without the board's permission. And I believe the superintendent should have the board members' permission for some of the stuff that he does. I think that's it.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Fleetwood.
My role as a board member to the superintendent is making sure if he has any questions about expensive things that has to be paid for the school system or a classroom or teacher contracts or anything that goes on with the school system. And also be there for other things that he needs to talk to, just not be friends, yes, be friends, but also be there for him and for all the teachers, and if they have questions they can not have a problem, get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Hooten.
So the board's job in general, in my opinion, is to provide guidance and set priorities for the superintendent. Then superintendent is there to run the day-to-day operations. We have to have someone that we can trust, someone who is transparent. The other thing that I think that is important to mention here is accountability. At the top of this, the board is accountable for everything that happens within the school system, whether it's the superintendent's decision or whether it's the board's decision. So that accountability lays with the superintendent or with the board, and we have to hold the superintendent accountable if he's not meeting our priorities.
Thank you. Next, Mr. King.
This job of the superintendent, I'm assigned to the school board to oversee the superintendent. The superintendent reports to the school board. It's important that we have a superintendent that is trustworthy and transparent. The school board doesn't decide what the superintendent does, but they can restrict what the superintendent does. So you can set guidelines and give him authority, take certain things away from him, the authority on certain things, so that he has to be responsible to you before he does those. And you need, as a school board, you need to listen to what your superintendent says, but not necessarily believe everything he says if the situation isn't honest, if he's not transparent, and sometimes you'll have to verify what he says.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Payne.
As a board member, you're representing a district, and as a representative of that district, you have to keep in mind what the constituents want. Micromanaging a superintendent, no, but we can give him a job description, and he can adhere to that.
Thank you. Next to the microphone would be Mrs. Ray.
I believe as a superintendent, he needs to bring his opinions and bring his ideas to us. We need a good level of respect between all of us, the board members and the superintendent. I believe it's a business. We're running a business here. And items need to be, the things brought to us need to be transparent. We need to discuss them as a group. Or we need to decide on them as a group. And we need to make the best decision for NLCS.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Gerges.
So remember, the superintendent of schools is the expert in education in regards to how to run the schools and in terms of the educational platforms these teachers are to teach on and such. But, our goal is to assist with policymaking, assist with budgets, and help guide him with the goals of our community. So as someone mentioned earlier, we're here as representatives of our constituents. As they bring questions to us, we take those to the board. We take those to the superintendent to help address those needs on a day-to-day basis. But at the same time, our goal with him is to work on providing the best education for our kids and to provide and grow our school system as best we can with the best teachers possible. But that does come from our oversight as a school board for him.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Miller.
Okay, the board works for the community and is held accountable by the community. The superintendent works for the board, and the board should hold him accountable, or her. The school board should establish the overall education vision and long-range goals for our district. So we do the big stuff, the superintendent would do the daily day stuff. And we're there to provide support to the community, the kids, and our teachers and support staff.
Thank you. Mrs. Collier.
Simply put, boards govern, superintendents manage. The role of a board is policy-making, it's more legislative in function, it's not administrative. That is what the superintendent's there for. A good quote I saw on this as I was happening to look over some stuff today is, governance is the trusteeship of power on behalf of the owners of power. Management is the exercise of power under the oversight of governance. So again, boards govern, superintendents manage, and it's very important that people know their roles and understand what a board can actually do and what a board can't do. That's very important when you're on the board. Thank you.
Next to the microphone, Mr. Godson.
So of course, the role is to represent my district, as well as vote according to their beliefs, as well as my own, collaborate with the other board members, as well as the superintendent. But I think there's going to be a very different role for this board when they first roll in. There are different expectations than what there would have been for a normal election. I wouldn't be standing here if it was a normal election. I don't think several of these individuals would be. This is going to be a different election. There's going to be different requirements for these board members. And as voters, we need to recognize that and remember that when we're standing there voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Johnson.
Excuse me, I think the hierarchy is flipped in the current administration. The superintendent works for the school board, not the school board works for the superintendent. They should coincide, they should cooperate with each other. The superintendent is guided by the board. The board does make the policies, but the superintendent should abide by those and not break them.
Thank you. This will begin the fifth question, and this will start with Mr. Patton. Until NLCS pays their teachers and staff a competitive wage, employees will continue to leave in droves. What plans do you have for increasing pay? Until NLCS pays their teachers and staff a competitive wage, employees will continue to leave in droves. What plans do you have for increasing pay?
So it's kind of like the business I run. Over the past year since COVID, in order to keep people, we had to continue to raise pay. Some of my employees make $15 an hour. Some of my other managers, they make almost as much as I do. Team members make almost as much as I do. We have to raise the teachers' pay in order to keep them. It was the same as with my store. I had to raise their pay in order to keep them.
Next to the microphone, Mr. Fleetwood.
I believe that if we raise teachers' wages, that we get more teachers in North Lawrence schools. This place used to be a good place to come and work. And that's what I want to get back. Teachers to come, enjoy their job, get the pay that they deserve. And that's what we need here. Thank you.
Next to the microphone, Mr. Hooten.
So, for this particular question, one, I think we need to continue reducing our operating costs. I think that's how we continually increase our teacher salaries. But a couple things I think we need to address. We've had teacher pay frozen for many years. We need to make up for those frozen areas. I know some people have been 3 to 5 years frozen, and now we're hiring people at 3 steps higher than what they can actually do. So we need to make up for frozen salaries. We need to look at increasing pay for an increase in degree. And I think we need to look at a stipend for special education, and maybe provide $5,000 or $10,000 for a special education instructor for a 3-year commitment. So those are a few things that I would look at for salary increases.
Thank you. Next, Mr. King.
We're all in agreement that teacher salaries need to be increased, but it's difficult to know exactly how to do that without full access to the budget line by line so we could review it. With the $49 million budget, though, we certainly should have a possibility to do that. What's important to understand is the different funds and how they are spent and how they're allocated. We must understand what we are spending and why. It's also important to have these priorities in mind when you're reviewing the budget. So as an example, if you're trying to improve the pay, then you keep that in mind when you're looking at the budget and see how the different money is being earmarked. A perfect example is the ESSER funds. They could have been spent to give teachers stipend when we receive them, but instead they were used for personal development for administration, and they were used to improve infrastructure.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Payne.
I don't think you have to look any further than our current budget. There's plenty of money there to increase teacher salaries. There's wasteful spending. There's allocation to different funds that need to be restructured. I think one of the issues that's going to happen is when we have to announce our current enrollment in March, it's going to start affecting how much revenue we have come in from tax dollars, so we're going to have to tighten our belts even more.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Ray.
So before consolidation, we were losing $1.5 million a year. Since consolidation, we have gained $2.2 million. So with consolidation, that's a large amount of money. We will give the teachers a pay raise. They will definitely get that. That money, it's not overnight, but it will happen. We need to look also into our operating costs and where we can make cuts there, and for funding and different things like that. But we need to support our teachers, let them know how appreciated they are, and give them the pay raise they deserve.
Thank you. Dr. Gerges?
We're all in agreement that our teachers need higher salaries. It's interesting to know that the monies that we are allowed to utilize to pay our teachers come directly from students. So each student with them, there are monies that are allocated from the state, and that is the budget that we can use to pay our teachers. So the goal at this point would be to provide the best education we can have, opportunities for our children, and then in turn from that to recruit more students back to our school system, because that is the only way we can increase our teachers' budget. We can give stipends and other things out of other sources, but in order to give them salaries, that must come from student funding from the state. So we can talk about all these other things, but really that is the most important thing we need to do, is bring back our students and re-recruit students from other communities, or actually from other centers like homeschool and such.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mrs. Miller.
As I mentioned before, the admin is working from the top down, and we should be working from the bottom up. Our teachers and staff are our most valuable asset. We need and want good qualified teachers. Our kids need it, and our entire school system needs it. Whatever it takes in the budget, we would have to find the money to do this. We have teachers that are driving over an hour a day now just to make $10,000 a year more. We need to increase that so they don't have to do this and we can get them back.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Ms. Collier.
So as I mentioned before, we are in the process of redistributing some of those savings. I think currently working on negotiations to increase teacher salary. That's been our number one goal. I think something else that's really important to retain our teachers, I know pay is very important, but something I hear often is teacher morale. And there's a lot that can be done in addition to pay to get some of our teachers to want to be here and stay here. There's some things being done now to try to get more involvement. They're celebrating birthdays or doing different challenges where teachers, like an employee wellness challenge where they can earn gift cards or Keurigs or mini fridges or things like that. There's a weekly newsletter going on. And there's other ways that I thought we could improve. Teachers just want to have a voice. So there's that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Godsey.
So it's my thought, I try to put myself in the position of the teachers. It's not appreciation that I want, it's value. What is my value? If you're telling me my value is this, and I've been here for 30 years, and I'm topped out, and I have no chance of getting anything else, of course I'm gonna look somewhere else. What is my value to you? If you tell me it's what we are currently getting, it's not enough. Even the teachers with the biggest hearts are gonna leave. They're going to have to. It's not a competitive wage anymore, not just for teachers, but cost of living. It's just not. Based on average enrollment for a corporation our size, we have to be competitive with all of those in our region. We have to. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Johnson.
I believe overspending is a huge issue. NLCS needs a stricter purchasing policy. There's way too much overspending. Where I'm employed now, we provide purchase orders for purchases and credits. This keeps the books accurate and those accountable. Get a hold of the spending, provide more for the teachers and staff. It's like a bucket system, and there's a leaky bucket in the budget. So, thank you.
Thank you. Last to answer the question, Mr. Parsley.
I pulled 19 former teachers out of NLCS that went to other corporations nearby, and they're making on average $6,500 more than what they made here. We have got to pay our teachers first. We raise their wage, we float their wage to competitive with all our surrounding corporations, and we pack in our other expenses around that. We need to examine our administrative staff. We need to look for redundant positions. We need to look for non-critical positions that don't measure up to frontline workers with the students. And we need to monitor our budget frequently. Revenues have exceeded expenses many of the past several years. I think there was one year, if you look at the dashboards, that show where expenses exceeded revenues. We're leaving money on the table every year. We're being told that, hey, we finally figured it out, we can raise the teachers' wages. We need to be nimble and agile to take that budget and flood it back towards teacher salaries in year if we can. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to question number 6, and that will go to Mr. Fleetwood. Beyond increasing pay, what steps would you like to see taken to increase employee morale? Beyond increasing pay, what steps would you like to see taken to increase employee morale?
I say one is more money. What's everybody wanting? Teachers, custodians, bus drivers, contract bus drivers. I believe they would get what they deserve to come and work at North Lawrence schools. They would have morale to get up every day to come and do their job like I did for 30-some years. I enjoyed it. I loved it. Still love North Lawrence Community Schools. The reason I'm running is because it's went downhill since I left. What I've been told from other people. The morale is down, and I'd like to get that back to the community, to the staff, and teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Hooten.
This is another easy answer for me. To do this, you have to improve the culture and the climate within the school system, period. That's the only thing you can do, in my opinion. To do that, I've talked about it before. You have to baseline the organization. You have to have that independent assessment. You have to have metrics for the organization that you can measure moving forward to know whether or not we're doing a good job. If we're not doing a good job, we need to know it so we can change course. And that improved culture and climate has to be done.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. King.
You normally solve a problem by finding the root cause and attacking that. But in this case, improving teacher morale is easy. Just reverse what we're doing now. Stop micromanaging them and give them autonomy over their classrooms. Correct the issues of pay inequalities. Provide salary and benefits based on qualifications and performance. Keep all lines of communication open, active. Communicate, don't dictate. Empower and support our teachers instead of bullying them or getting in their way. Show appreciation in both words and actions. Treat them as professionals that they are. The teacher-student relationship is paramount to student learning. We have to let the teachers do their job.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Payne.
As a teacher myself, outside of being compensated, I would say the next thing on my list that would increase my morale is my class sizes. You know, once they get up to around 30, it's almost unmanageable. And you're never going to have a relationship with any of your students if you don't have a good balance of teacher-student ratios.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Ray.
So right now, they do have a weekly curriculum team newsletter, which I think helps encourage other teachers and hearing from each other and what they're doing within their classroom and stuff. And I think that helps seeing what the other teachers are doing and stuff. I think that it's nice to obviously equip the teachers, as he said, for their class size. They need all the things they need in their classroom to be ready for the day. And I think that teachers need to have a great, they need to have a great relationship with their students, and I think that will help with the morale. I think that on a personal level, teachers do well whenever they're with their students.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Gerges.
So beyond increasing salaries, I think one of the best things we can do is give them better benefits, both health care benefits and really more time off. Teachers anymore seem to be more and more burnt out by all the events of COVID and such, and giving them the opportunities to have some time just to relax and unwind, even during the school days, I think incredibly important. Other things we talked about is just increasing their voice, allowing them to speak with us freely so that we can have inner dialogue that allows us to know exactly what they want. I know that more recently listened to them, and they were asking for just more personal items back in the room, whether it's coffee makers or refrigerators, free passes to sports events, reduced lunches for the teaching staff. There's so many things that we can do and are working on doing. And I think those are just the little things that can help them feel more in tune with the school system. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Miller.
If you feel valued and trusted, you enjoy your job and you don't mind going to work. When you don't have that feeling, then you drag your feet when you have to go in every day. They need to have more freedom in teaching in their classrooms, not be told exactly how, what, when, and where they can teach. They are so restricted. A lot of them, their class sizes are unmanageable. They need more manageable, smaller class sizes. They need more aides, especially if they have your special students in there. They each need an aide, and some of them don't have one. I know in the special in the high school, they don't have enough aides and they don't have enough teachers, which makes it really tough on them. So we just need to help them with what they need to get done on a daily basis, and I think that would make them happier and more able to come to work.
Thank you. Mrs. Collier.
Teachers just want to have a voice. Maybe we could instill some type of regular meetings with the board just to address some issues they're having just on an informal basis. Might help a little bit with morale. Maybe finding better ways to meet their individual needs. Celebrate teachers' successes, no matter how big or how small. Again, have teachers more involved in decision-making processes that affect them, and offer some type of counseling sessions to deal with the burnout and things that Dr. Gerges mentioned. But teacher morale, another thing that really plays into this is community morale. We take pride in our schools, and the community needs to rally behind our teachers. For example, B&L had an open house, and hopefully I'll get it to discuss that a little bit further.
Thank you. Mr. Godsey.
Of course, outside of money, a day free of fear of reprisal, for breathing wrong, for looking at somebody wrong, talking to somebody you don't agree with. I had several teachers that I knew that wouldn't even sign my petition. That's crazy. A day free from fear of reprisal for ridiculousness. That would raise my morale, knowing that I can come to work and not have to worry about either being disciplined or sent home from what could be considered a tyrant. Absolute power. A day free from fear. Thank you.
Next to the microphone, Mr. Johnson.
The mini fridges and coffee makers, I'm sure were a nice touch, but the biggest thing that we can do for teachers is make them feel supported. We need to foster an environment from the board superintendent down. The change has to come from the high level. One thing I've heard is having resources and decisions over the summer. That goes along with respecting the teacher's time. Get the decisions made over the summer so that when school starts, they'll have everything they need. Some things like shipping, delays, paper shortages, stuff like that are beyond our control.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Parsley.
Beyond pay, we need to lead our NLCS employees well. I polled most of our teachers, 84 responses. Pay was number one, then it was leadership, environment, and stress. Those are the things that are created in the environment by a leadership team. Inspire them. Give them a shared vision. Tell them what they're a part of. Tell them where they're going. Take their voice, hear their voice, and help them. Let them help carve where you're going. Our teachers need aids. They need smaller class sizes. They need resources. They're spending their free time in the run up to school starting this summer, unpaid in their classrooms, doing things they need to do. We need to compensate them for that. We need an open door policy with the board. We need to do away with this policy that's interpreted as a gag order so that we have feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Last to the microphone, Mr. Patton.
So when you have bad morale from a leader, you don't want to work for that leader. I know I didn't when I had that problem. The only way to fix that is by getting rid of that leader. He doesn't listen to the teachers. He doesn't listen to the board. He does what he wants to do.
And that ends question 6. We'll now take a brief intermission for about 10 minutes to let the candidates be able to walk around and stretch their legs, because it's not much fun sitting here in these stiff chairs for a little bit. So we'll start that in 10 minutes now.
Okay. Let's turn them off because we don't waste battery. Turn it off. Let's go. Maybe look at it. Okay. It's one of the small ones, right? nothing. I think mine's too. Yeah. Yes. It looks really good too. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, I turned mine off. I appreciate you doing this, man. Man, did you get a hold of her?
Yeah,
You're awesome.
she's already here.
Oh, okay. Great job. Thank you. Extra credit coming your way, girl. Come on.
When this is over, if you have some of your kids left, could we borrow them for just a few minutes to help strike the stage and stuff?
Yeah.
Just tables.
Yeah, and also, if you leave stuff, tomorrow's during class, my first portion of the period, I'll come in here and tear things down. If you want to just do that. Like you get...
Just the tables, the stuff on stage.
Oh, okay.
The band, high school band's gonna be in here tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
They're getting ready for a concert on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, that's totally fine.
That's what we can knock out tonight.
Yeah, we'll get her done. The audio's good too, so we should be rocking.
Is this being streamed on?
YouTube for now. We're in the super early stages of figuring this all out. What I'd like to do, my future goal here is to get all mounted PTZ cameras in the room that we can operate in the booth. None of this. None run a gun, all line array system speaking,
Sweet.
the whole thing. And as far as right now, it's
in
the works and ready to go.
We really need the line arrays.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sound is number one. For sure.
Yeah. I got these junky little speakers for front fills.
Yes.
And then our mains are up there over everybody's head.
Yep.
Yeah, if it wasn't for these front fills, people sitting in the first 6 rows wouldn't be here anything.
Yep.
But yeah,
Well,
line arrays.
It's coming. For sure.
All
I'm
right.
excited. You might, will you change one of these? This one is the fresh battery. Change that battery, turn it on. Let me check the scene. And then we should be ready to rock.
If If we can get the school board candidates to come back to the stage, we'll start back up here in about 1 minute.
Is it on? You run up there and turn that one on. Put that over your ear.
David, we good? Okay. All right. Thank you all for returning with us. We'll start in with question number 7. Question number 7 goes to Ty Hooten. Mr. Hooten, what accountability measures would you like to see implemented to increase transparency and communication between the community, board, district office, and school personnel?
Man, I think I've hit this one. We need to know where we're at as an organization. We need to baseline that organization. I would recommend we have a dashboard where we're tracking metrics on a regular basis. I think we need to have principals present to the board and the superintendent at the board meetings to show each school how they're progressing on whatever strategic goals that we align for them. And that's really what you have to do in a nutshell is bring those administrators in, show us what you're trying to do, how you're trying to accomplish these goals, and how you're progressing towards them. And then hold the people accountable. If they're not progressing towards the goals that we've laid out, we need to do something about it.
Thank you. Next for question 7, Mr. King.
Transparency means easy to see through. It's normally used when something isn't truthful or when you're trying to hide something. So we can see why that's an issue with this administration and this school board. When people consider transparency, they really are talking about accountability. And the best way to have accountability is to have a strategic plan. If you have a plan, you have goals set, you have measurable goals, you have milestones, it's easy to hold somebody accountable to what you're trying to achieve. And when you're making decisions, you should be transparent. You need to be open and honest and explain as much as possible why you made the decision. You should communicate directly and provide insight to that decision-making process. The more difficult the decision, the more important the decision, the greater the need for accountability.
Wait a second. Put the instrument.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Payne.
Well, one measure I would like to see is at the end of a school board meeting, the agenda for the next school board meeting is published so that we have time, the public has time to see what's going to be discussed. And I think on a broader scope that yes, we need to make sure that the vision of the school corporation is put out at the beginning of the school year, and that we stay on track with that.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mrs. Ray.
I believe to give more accountability, we need to give examples of our goals and provide numbers so that we can explain the plan of events. I believe the more information that is given to the people is more easily understood, and you can be more on board with the board's decisions if you know what the plan is and if it's transparent and laid out as far as numbers or words, however it may be. I I feel like if it's presented to you on paper where you can actually read it, look at it, study it, you are more apt to follow it and be on board with it.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Gerges.
I think, an improved transparency amongst all parties involved. I think I'd like to see us put together some form of a digital platform that would involve regular meeting minutes, which I think is important, but I think at the same time, a newsletter that would help people understand kind of where we're coming from, what we're thinking, what we're doing. Some things obviously with personnel we're unable to do, but there is quite a bit of thought that goes into the decisions that are made, and often we don't have enough time or opportunity to discuss those in the board meetings. I think as a board, we would like to have much more open communication with people that come to the board meetings, but it just seems that it's been so volatile recently, it just makes it very difficult to do so. So I'd like to see us at least have a more respectful conversation at the board level, because I think that's where people come with their questions, and we'd be more than happy to answer those questions if it just didn't become so volatile so quickly.
Thank you. Next to the microphone is Mrs. Miller.
Oh, I was ahead of him, I'm sorry. Okay, it starts with the school board. The school board needs to be more open and transparent and honest with the community, the admin, and school personnel. There needs to be more explanations with the decisions, why they are doing it, where they got their decisions from, how, when, where. The school personnel should feel comfortable coming to a school board member, should feel comfortable coming to anybody in the admin with a question, a problem, even a compliment. They don't have that trust, that openness that we need right now, and that's something we need to strive and work for.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Collier.
A lot of public reaction is based on people operating from limited or inaccurate information, and we could possibly curb some of this. I think Dr. Gerges touched on this, some type of maybe a newsletter or maybe even a quarterly newsletter from the board, just kind of some things that are going on as far as visions and plans. And I think we need to start having more work sessions. We used to do that more, where basically information is just brought to the board and we're absorbing it and taking it in just as the public is. We're not voting on it, we're not making any decisions, it's just kind of absorbing it and learning more about different issues that might be coming up in the future. And I think someone else maybe touched on this too, and we used to do this a lot as well. We would have building principals come to board meetings and give a little showcase as to what's happening in their schools. We've seen robotics and different things like that, so I think that would be very important as well.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Godsey.
Accountability through transparency, of course. All budgets should be wide open. Everybody should be able to see what's there, how the money's allocated, where it comes from, where it goes, what part of the $49 million is specific for facilities, what part is for teachers and salaries and administrator salaries, knowing which pots of money the superintendent and their administrative staff, their funding comes from. Is it different than the teacher salaries? Transparency is very important. Accountability, I don't understand how the superintendent has not been brought forth in front of the board to check him on some of his actions. I don't get it. He should stand up just like I have to yearly and be judged by my supervisor. Thank you.
Next to the microphone is Mr. Johnson.
I think allowing the community to know some of the agenda that is talked about during the executive sessions. I know not everything can be talked about, but there are a few things that I think that can be addressed. I believe allowing teachers to address the board with concerns and issues that they're running into. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Parsley.
It's never been easier to communicate with folks across the globe, and that goes right here in the local town as well, in the community in LCS. I've done 3 different polls. The number one suggestion from the public to board members is to communicate, be transparent, listen, visit. I would recommend that we do publish a strategy. We set what our high priorities are. The public sees that our actions are centered around these high priorities and report and update regularly. I think the board needs to have an engagement criteria. Answer your emails, answer PMs, maybe even have office hours, even though we don't really have offices. Get out to the schools, visit the teachers, see the principals, see the students, see what's going on in the school so you know what the truth is out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Patton.
So I've been watching more of the board meetings lately since the beginning of the school year. I can tell you that even I got kind of angry, and this is probably why the parents are getting angry with the current administration. They only answer the questions they want to answer. As a board member, you work for the people in the county. You have to answer the questions, whether you want to answer them or not. Yes, they might be hard questions. You might not like the answer you have to give, but you have to answer the questions.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Fleetwood.
We're all taxpayers. We all need to know what goes on in the school system. The board meetings, they should let us know what's going on, because our taxpayers, we pay to what goes on in the school system and what provides our schools to run. And I think as a board member, to visit these schools and talk to teachers and talk to the staff and see what they need, see what would they like to need. That's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to question 8. That'll start with Mr. King. With the current state of enrollment for Olytic Middle School, what do you foresee as a future plan for the building? With current state of enrollment for Olytic Middle School, what do you foresee as a future plan for the building?
I think the future plan for the building is to be a middle school. I believe we have the necessary physical and human resources to make Olytic Middle School a viable middle school now. The plan to close middle school was orchestrated since the consolidation was voted on, and it's been achieved under the direction of the superintendent without any checks or balances from the school board. So the damage has been done, but it can be undone with the resources and the facility that we currently have.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Payne.
What middle school? I don't think that Olytic should be the only thing up there on the board. I think that Shawswick should be included as well. There's no enrollment for Shawswick, and there's minimal for Olytic, but I think they should both be reopened. A county this size can support 3 middle schools, and it should.
Thank you. Next up, Ms. Ray.
As far as Olytic Middle School goes, our enrollment is very low. The kids that have chose to stay there still have opportunities. I do believe we have so many more opportunities at BMS. We do have a teacher shortage at Olytic. I do know the principal has interviewed multiple teachers for Olytic this year, and they couldn't find them. So I think at this point, you do what's best for the kids, for the students, for the teachers, for everyone, and you move forward and make the best of it. And I think there are so many opportunities there at Bedford Middle School. It's unbelievable what they have given the kids.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Gerges.
As you know, I did not vote to close Olytic Middle School because I felt there was an opportunity there to give our kids, smaller classroom opportunities, as well as the opportunity for kids to actually go to the same school that their parents who are alma maters went to before. But in terms of the space, it can be used for extracurricular activities. It can be used to expand the elementary school and some of the other course offerings we have there, and even utilize some of that for the special needs kids. So there is space that can be utilized. Right now, there are no overt plans for that place at this time, but there are several things that can be done. Mostly, I think, can be expanded the services that are currently going on at the primary school system, and then also if we can expand some of the other aspects in terms of extracurricular activities.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Miller.
OMS was built to be a middle school, and I see it flourishing again as a middle school. The middle schools each have their own cultures, and OMS kids love their school, their small classes. I see it reopened. Maybe we should have a bus running both between BMS and OMS to allow the kids to attend either which one, and that would support the staff, the kids, the numbers, and I think if we reopen it, we would get a lot of kids back, and then that would be our money to support it.
Next up at the microphone, Mrs. Collier.
So I voted, I think, twice to keep Olytic open. And sadly, we're down to about, I think, 12 kids was the last count there. I want to see Olytic open. I mean, it helps to have multiple middle schools in a community. I mean, kids, even just for, play on teams and play sporting events and things like that. But our biggest thing is, I think someone mentioned, is we've got to get the teachers there and we've got to get staff there. We're going to have to attract them somehow. I was trying to think of ways, at the time, if we could offer stipends, if we could do things like that, but I was told we weren't able to do that. But we've got to find a way to get more teachers and more staff there so we can get our kids back there and keep Olytic open if that's what the vision is at this time. Thank you.
Next to the podium, Mr. Godsey.
So this is a question my wife and I have both been concerned with because our youngest daughter will be starting junior high next year. What do we do? If Olytic does not get staffed to a point to where it can handle students again, will we be forced to go to BMS or deal with what is being dealt with so far this year? That's a tough choice to make. Or do we go outside? At that point, do we go to a different county? It's a choice that a lot of parents are having to make. Teachers are making it as well. Do they leave for the betterment of their for their pay and morale? Well, we have to think about that for our children as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Johnson.
I see the future of OMS as being a school. That building was built to be a school, and that's what it should be. When there's no school, the future of the town is in jeopardy. Families want to move to Olytic. Families won't move to Olytic when there is no school. You know, people love that small town feel. Hire the teachers, and you'll see families, whether they're old or new, see them move to Olytic, and you can watch it thrive.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Parsley.
This is honestly one of the harder questions tonight for me, not because I don't think it needs to be middle school. I think it does. I think there needs to be a task force approach, though. I don't think I can answer this in 45 seconds. I think we need to start planning now for probably 23, 24 school year, maybe next year. But we need to think about all options on the table. Is that redistricting, rebalancing, moving staff, pairing or gaining parity with the offerings of each school? I think there's also an awful lot of goodwill that has to be restored with the community. Between LCIS and SCA, there's about 80 7th and 8th graders at those two schools. Let's talk about bringing those folks back into and let's talk about that with those school boards. I think we need to address that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Patton.
I think Olytic should be opened back up as a middle school, along with Shawswick. They probably do need to redraw the lines. BMS, there's an awful lot of students there, probably more than the teachers can handle. They need to be split between the three schools.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Fleetwood.
I believe years ago, they redistricted these schools years ago and sent kids here, kids to there, where some schools was overcrowded. And I think that North Lawrence can do something to get this middle school back open. I think my son played at Shawswick Junior High. They always look forward to playing Olytic Junior High. Same with when I was a kid. These kids love to compete against these middle schools, and that's what we're here for. All sports love to compete against Bedford Junior High, Shawswick, and Olytic. It's always been a rival, always. And I think it should be back open. I think we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the podium, Mr. Hooten.
I'm going to be bold here. I'm going to buck the trend. OMS should close as a middle school. BMS is a great school. It improves teacher collaboration. We just moved half of the students or a portion of the students to BMS. Why do we want to move those students again and split them up? It's a great school. I think we should close OMS, move everybody to BMS, and focus on the staffing at BMS so that we got the smaller class sizes and provide the same opportunities for our kids, whether that's orchestra, band, whatever your child is into. If we split these up, we're not going to be able to provide the same resources to every school. And to me, that's a travesty when my kids don't play sports, but my son really loved orchestra and found that in the middle schools.
Thank you. It's now time for question number 9, starting with Mr. Payne. What do you feel are the current strengths of NLCS? What do you feel are the current strengths of NLCS, Mr. Payne?
I believe that our greatest strength are our employees. Without them, functioning is is just not possible. So through consolidation, through redistricting, through it all, it's fallen on their shoulders to hold this together. So those of them that stayed with us, I believe that is our strength, and I would look forward to adding to that strength.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Ray.
Well, I believe that obviously our teachers are our biggest strength of NLCS. They are there every day, they're with our children, guiding our children. We have lots of programs that I'm very happy to have in our school system. We have the Stellar program, and which helps our high school students earn like 1.5 years while they're in high school of college classes. We have tons of elective classes that give all of our kids opportunities to do different things that aren't just on the normal everyday path. We have a Gateway Academy that is awesome, that helps a lot of our students that wouldn't have that opportunity. And then we have our new Playful Pathways that give our young children opportunity.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Gerges.
The ongoing theme tonight is making sure that our teachers are treated with the respect they deserve and given given the ability to speak out and be heard in terms of board decisions. But obviously our teaching staff and support staff are the number one asset that our school system holds. Second thing is, our Career Center is a diamond in the rough in this community, in this region. It is something that has grown, has become increasingly more important for students who choose a pathway that is not necessarily collegiate driven. Of course, our college preparatory courses and those systems continue to grow. And then, of course, the community support around our sports. I think going to a football game on a Friday night is just an amazing time to see the community come together behind one thing. And even if we win or lose, we always, you can always see the community support those games. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Miller.
One of our greatest strengths of NLCS is our community. We have strong community support. We have parents who are very supportive of our teachers, our students, our staff. They are there to help us. If you need help, you ask them and they show up. The PTOs show this, they look at what they do at our schools every day. Our teachers and staff, great teachers make us great, make our kids great, make our communities and our school system great. We have robotics at Needmore. We have 5th, 6th graders who went to nationals. That is so awesome. We have the Green Thumbs at Lincoln. We just need these people, these teachers to take their interest and give it to the kids. And our greatest strength is our students.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Collier.
We have great students, we have great staff, we've got the Early Learning Center at Stalker, we've got the Gateway Academy that impacts 100 and 150 students a year, increases our graduation rates, we've got the Career Center where we've just added about $500,000 in new equipment. Mentioned before, the Stellar Scholar, the early college learning program, allows kids to complete college credits while still in high school. We've got dual credit. We've got the advisory intervention, which was a teacher-led initiative here at BNL, the Red, White, and Blue Days. Kids are getting some help with their schoolwork, but then they're also, getting to do things like play with goats. We've got expanded summer school, training for teachers. We're helping kids get college ready. We've got Project Lead the Way. We've got robotics, more technology in the classroom, our summer meal program.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Godsey.
greatest strength are our kids. Why else would we be here? Why else would we argue with each other? It's our kids. They give me the strength to come up here in front of you, speak my mind, be nervous as I possibly can be right now, to protect them. My daughters are my greatest strength. That's why I'm here. Teachers, we give them our kids willingly. You have to think about that daily. We give them our kids. The amount of respect that should be given to the teachers beyond any kind of money that could ever be given. Appreciation, whatever. The amount of respect they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Johnson.
I think one of the biggest strengths of NLCS is the passion of the teachers. You know, they're tired, they're exhausted, but they are there for our kids. The support staff that worked diligently through the pandemic to keep everybody safe. You know, they all want to see NLCS succeed. We all do. PTO groups doing phenomenal. You know, the parents also, they're a big strength because they want the best for their kids and everybody's kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Parsley.
You know that if our employees have stuck it out and are still supporting NLCS and teaching and serving, that they're doing it out of the love and the passion that they have for the kids. So that's our number one strength. Our NLCC gets a lot of high regards. I've not had a lot to do with it, or don't know a lot about it, but I hear a lot of good stories. It's not all doom and gloom. My poll from all the teachers indicated that there are buildings with good administrators, leading well, and doing the best they can for the people. We've got AP and we've got advanced courses, advanced placement courses. We've got college level courses that are getting our students credit towards college while they're still in high school, as was mentioned. We've got electives at BMS that my daughter's taking that our teachers bring in their whole person, and appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Patton to the microphone.
The current strengths of North Lawrence Community Schools is the teachers and the children. Without the teachers and without the children, who's going to continue to run Lawrence County? Most of the students that go to North Lawrence Community Schools now, some of them will be teachers, doctors, nurses, police officers, firefighters, run the grocery store, the restaurants.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Fleetwood.
The strength of the North Lawrence Community Schools, the good Lord above. He's our strength for our schools, for our teachers, for our students, support staff, aides. I can name so many. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Hoot.
I have a long list here, so number one, in my opinion, staff, teachers, administrators, support staff. They're the glue that holds the community together, the students together. Extracurriculars. My wife's the robotics coach. She's the founder of Lincoln Green Thumbs and still a sponsor. It's the largest extracurricular activity that goes on at Lincoln. The red, white, and blue days that B&L is doing has been great. I love those ideas. I love getting the kids out to choose what they want to do. The North Lawrence Career Center, the interns and co-ops that go along with those to get people experience in the workforce. The B&L open house that they just recently had. I went to that as a parent and it was great. to do that. The early college program for dual credit. There's a lot of great things going on in NLCS, and I want to see that continue and grow.
Thank you. Next, Mr. King.
The dedication, effort, and professionalism of our teachers and aides, especially under adverse conditions. They are resilient, and they deserve to be recognized for their resilience. Their career center, both with the impact on our students and the outreach to the community. And our facilities and physical assets. Perhaps some of our facilities should not have been built, but the fact is that we have them. And that fact could be a positive in selecting future options. I have some extra time, so I'm going to take a quick time out. Remind everybody that you can vote for any district that you want. You don't have to vote just for your district. So I'm sure that some of you out there looking up here thinking, I would like to vote for that guy. You don't have to be in District 3 to vote for me. You can vote for me from any district.
Next to the microphone will be Mrs. Ray with question number 10. As a board member, what do you see is your role regarding the selection of curriculum and materials used in classrooms? As a board member, what do you see is your role regarding the selection of curriculum and materials used in classrooms?
Well, I feel like we have someone that oversees our curriculum and chooses that. I feel like they should bring it to the board. We should look over it and decide what is best for our schools. I think our teachers should have a big role in that. I mean, they're the ones teaching it, and we should let them have a voice in it as well. But I do think that as a whole, we should come together as a team and work on that together and just be unified in that.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Gerges.
Each school system has a curriculum director that works with the teaching staff at the various schools to help put together the best curriculum for our students. So that in turn then is brought together with the board and utilizing basically the values of our community, the values of our school board, that helps guide what curriculum that we use. So, you know, there are experts that deal with this. As a board, we help oversee this, and we are definitely there to approve it. But often, many of the things, we are looking at things that may be counterintuitive to our values, and we've actually had to make some changes to some of our curriculum because we felt that it's not what our community needed or really what our students need to hear.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Miller.
Okay, NLCS does have a director of curriculum, and I think that this person works with the teachers, and they should have a say in what they teach and what they present to their classes on a daily basis. We should let the ones who are educated and deal with this on a daily basis be the ones who select the curriculum. As a board, we should oversee that the curriculum they choose fits within the values that our community has and what we want our kids to learn.
Thank you. Next to the podium, Mrs. Collier.
So we as a board can have a vision of what we want to see as our curriculum, but as everyone stated, of course, we do have a curriculum office. And just to kind of highlight some of the things that have been happening in the last few years is the science of reading. We've really increased, we've changed some of the ways, teaching kids how to read, and found that that has worked really well, and it's really helping our literacy rate. And that's just kind of an example of why we have a curriculum office to do that. That is not the board. I have no business. I'm a lawyer. I have no business being involved in a curriculum. So we have the people involved. We have the teachers. We have the curriculum office involved in those decisions, and obviously it's working, and then they can bring it to us and we can make sure it is in line with our vision and our policy and our values and vote on it at that time.
Thank you. Mr. Godsey will be next.
I feel my role in this would be to make sure that we have the best experts out there brought together, collaborate with our current teachers to come up with the best curriculum. After that, to ensure that the community has an avenue to voice their pleasure or displeasure. That's my role. If you have a problem, you should come to me. If you do come to me, I make sure the board knows. That's my job. And if you continue to have a question, come to the board meetings. Voice your displeasure, where I will answer your question. If nobody else will, I'll sit there and talk to you. I'll talk to you afterwards. Come to me with any questions. Support the staff. That is my role, as well as the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Johnson.
I think the starting point would be getting the right curriculum for the right grades. Some of the grades are learning subjects that are 1-2 years ahead of what they should be. Allowing the board as a collective to vote on the curriculum that is brought before them with guidance of the curriculum director with their insights.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Parsley.
I believe the board's role in curriculum is to establish a systemic approach to curriculum selection, one that takes into account the teacher's voice, establish a board or committee of teachers to aid in the selection, establish pilots through these teachers who can kind of pave the way to see if these are curriculums we want to pursue. We want to ensure there's flexibility and autonomy somewhat in these curriculums so that it's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all for every single teacher. Let the teachers take their gifts and apply them, customize, if you will. And then we want to set goals. We want to get feedback. We want to know, are these test scores going up because of this curriculum? Are they going down? And are we agile enough to adapt as we see that happening? Unfortunately, these are made year at a time, unfortunately. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Patton.
The curriculum director should pick the materials, but I believe as a board member, the board should vote on what gets in and out, and teachers and parents and principals should all have a choice on what their kids are taught. I know I got a letter sent home and I had to sign it for my then 4th grade son to be part of a certain subject that I didn't believe he needed to be a part of. Some of that stuff ain't age appropriate.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Fleetwood.
Curriculum. I believe the teachers and staff should get together and decide what they would like to do for the kids, and then get with the principal and then the superintendent. Then the superintendent get a hold of us and we make a talk about it and see if it's take a vote on it, and have the teachers come and talk to board members. I mean, I'm willing to, if I get elected, they can talk to me, call me on the phone, whatever. It won't be a problem with me. Thank you.
Next on the podium is Mr. Hooten.
I believe the board's position here is oversight and creating a process. That process should be documented. We should be following that process. That process should be available to teachers, to administrators, to the community. We should have teachers, community members on that curriculum decide what is in the best interest of the community. We should also pilot curriculum. My wife has done that on several occasions where she's piloted a curriculum and provided feedback. We've also made some positive changes in this area. A few years ago, I think we had a reading curriculum that we didn't get a whole lot of feedback in. And I think that has changed moving forward, so I think we're moving in the right direction, but I think we still need to continue moving forward on that subject.
Next to the podium is Mr. King.
I agree that the school board really doesn't have a role in the actual selection of the curriculum. We had a good process for selecting curriculum before we had a director, and it would work now. We had a committee of teachers from every building along with parents review material from different vendors and then select a few options to be evaluated. The teachers then evaluated the different curriculum and a choice was made. And of course, everything was consistent with state standards. One thing we also think we need to look at is the amount of screen time for students in school. I know some school corporations prefer to have all their curriculum digital on Chromebooks, but recent studies show that excessive screen time has some harmful effects on children. We know they'll get screen time out of school, and we need to be careful they don't get too much in school.
Next to the podium is Mr. Payne.
As a former teacher working with a curriculum director, I can tell you that that position is a waste of money. You have the professionals in place to bring a committee together of teachers, maybe even some educated parents, to select a curriculum, provide a justification, and give it to the board. It's not a board member's job to select a curriculum.
Thank you. Now moving on to question 11. Dr. Gerges will be first to answer. What do you believe should be the relationship between NLCS and the charter schools in our community? What do you believe should be the relationship between NLCS and the charter schools in our community?
It's an interesting question. The reality is there's two sides to this question. One side is that we want the best for our students. And when you look at what we're seeing thus far, some of the charter schools are not providing the education these kids need. But the other issue to think about is that every child that leaves our school system and goes to a charter school then takes money away from what could be, or actually what would be salary driven for our teachers. And so each student that leaves takes money away from our teacher salaries. And so, honestly, they're competitive. I mean, it's a competition. And unfortunately, we don't see it that way, but the school is a business. And every child that leaves basically takes away from our ability to give our students and teachers, our teachers the raises they need.
Thank you. Next to the podium, Mrs. Miller.
Charter schools are a big part of education landscape anymore these days. You have parents that aren't happy or want to teach their children in a different way, a different subject, and that's how our charter schools are formed. I think the best way not to have charter schools in your community is to have a strong public school system where they want to send their kids, where they like the teachers, where they like the staff, where they're happy with everything going on with the school board, the administration.
Thank you. Next, Mrs. Collier.
There are so many options for parents right now to educate their children, and I mean, that can be a good thing. As parents, we know it's hard. Not every kid learns in the same way, and not every kid learns in the environment in the same way. And we have to keep in mind, even if children choose to go to specifically in our community, the charter schools here, as far as I know, they don't have, I'm not for certain if they have a middle school, but I'm certain they don't have a high school. So these kids are going to come back to us. So we want to make sure they're getting a great education, whether they're at a charter school, they're being homeschooled, doing an online platform, or within our schools, because eventually, hopefully, they'll be back in our school system. They'll be back here at BNL. So we've just got to make sure our kids get the best education possible.
Next to the podium, Mr. Godson.
I'd like to say this is an original thought, but I'm getting really tired of people saying this is a business. It's kids. It's kids. Where the business stops, balanced budget. After that, it's the kids. It's the teachers, people that support it. Quit saying it's a business, it's kids. As for SCA and LCIS, as it currently stands, all those students will funnel either into BNL or another high school in the area. It would be good for us to not have animosity towards those people, to work with them, collaborate with them, maybe recruit some of them back, as well as those students that we lost. Why make an enemy out of somebody if we don't have to? Thank you.
Next to the podium, Mr. Johnson.
The charter schools' current middle schoolers will be our next high schoolers. Competition can be healthy if it's approached in the correct way. We need to keep those doors open because enrollment does pay our teachers' salaries, and once they get into high school, that enrollment will help those teachers. So keep the doors open and not burn bridges between those charter schools.
Next to the podium, Mr. Parsley.
We have got to engage and be conversant with those charter schools. I know exactly how many students are there. 260 at LCIS, 160 at SCA. 86 7th and 8th graders, if you're wondering how many middle schoolers are there. We have got to be at the table with those. Board to board, set up a delegation, whatever it is. I have talked in depth with multiple board members of both LCIS and SCA. We can compete. I've told them, yeah, we want NLCS to be better. We want it to be the best version of itself in order to compete for those students. Maybe their 6th graders will be our 7th graders. Definitely want their 8th graders to be our 9th graders. We don't want them going to Eastern Green. So we have got to compete. Thank you.
Next to the podium is Mr. Patton.
As North Lawrence Community Schools, we have to work with them. They're still part of the community. Their parents just still live and work in the community, and if not, they will go to Greene County. I know several of them that did, that lived out there in Springville. When their parents got mad at North Lawrence, they went to Eastern Green, still going there. So if we don't play nice with the charter schools, same thing's going to happen.
Next to the podium, Mr. Fleetwood.
I agree with Mr. Godsey. This is not a business. This is a school system. Charter schools, there are kids, no matter where they're at, we should take care of them. And I believe with North Lawrence, if they can take care of them, if they need something, I think we should provide it. There are kids, and I'm tired of hearing this is a business. I've been here, worked here. This is not a business. This is a school. We're here for the kids. We're here for the teachers. It's unreal how this is. The school system has went downhill. Thank you.
Next to the podium, Mr. Hooten.
think the best way that I can describe this relationship is friendly competition. I want North Lawrence Community Schools to be the best. I think that starts with our educators, providing them the resources that they need to be successful. That's salary, that's other resources. I want to earn those students back. You know, they're going to be at B&L. You know, another thing that I want to mention here is, you know, as NLCS board members, we're elected to do what's in the best interest of NLCS, not necessarily what's in the best interest of LCIS or SEA. But I do want to work with them. I don't think the schools should have been gutted the way they were to try to prevent schools from opening. We have to work with them in whatever way we can find best possible.
Thank you. Next to the podium, Mr. King.
We need to understand why the charter schools exist in the first place. We need to get to the root of the cause of why NLCS families are going elsewhere. It's unfortunate that we have two charter schools, but since they do exist and have an impact on enrollment, they can't be ignored and dismissed. I know we're competing for the same students, but our relationship with them should be one of cooperation, not hostility. My focus will be to grow enrollment. My focus will be to attract students and parents by making NLCS the best choice in the county. Let's make NLCS the best choice and embrace the competition.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Penn.
I believe the charter school exists because of passionate people. And in my mind, those are our buildings, those are our teachers, and those are our children. So I may be the optimist here, but I think if we head in the right direction, make a few actionary decisions, that we can maybe even approach these two schools and reabsorb their buildings, their teachers, and their students. And that may mean reopening them. The consolidation doesn't work. It's a farce that we even have excess budget.
Next to the podium, Ms. Ray.
I believe as far as the charter schools and NLCS, that we all have the same goal. We all love our kids and we all want the best for them. Now, yes, it's a competition. We need to build NLCS back up. We need to bring our students back. We need more unity. We need better opportunities for them than the charter schools have. We need to compete for our students. Give them more opportunity that the charter schools can give them, and we need to get them back. But I think the ultimate goal is we all love our kids and we all want the best for them.
Thank you. On to the final question, number 12, starting with Mrs. Miller. What areas of NLCS have you researched to prepare to be a board member and serve the students and community? What areas of NLCS have you researched to prepare to be a board member and serve the students and the community? Mrs. Miller.
Now I know why everybody walks slower up here when they're the first one to answer. Okay, I have been at Olytic for 35 years. I mean, I've been in there reading to kindergartners. We had a former principal where we'd go in and volunteer and we'd help students that need extra help. So, you know, I've been around there a lot. But I've talked to a lot of teachers, a lot of parents, and I've talked to a lot of kids. We have a lot of kids who aren't happy with the way things are going on. They like their schools, they like the way things were set up, and this has been pushed on them and shoved down their throats, and they're not happy. So, you know, you have to talk to people and figure out what they want.
Thank you. Mrs. Collier?
Well, I've pretty much been living and breathing this for the last 9 years that I've been on the board, so kind of have a different perspective here. I've been involved with our schools, well, probably since I went to school here in kindergarten, like a few years ago. Won't say how many years ago it's been since I graduated. But even after I got out of school, even as a deputy prosecutor here in Lawrence County, I've always worked closely with our schools. I've had a daughter go through our school system who's still in our schools here. And again, I've been on the board. I've witnessed the issues. I've shed tears when, you know, when I've seen, you know, parents upset about decisions that were made. It affects me too. So as far as research, just being the personal experience that I've lived through.
Thank you. Mr. Gutsy, you're next.
To be completely honest with you, it's been a mad dash ever since I decided to run. Anything I can get my hands on. But it's more so trying to talk to as many people as possible. Get opinions, get concerns, find out what their kids' issues are and how they're being addressed or not addressed. It's more so talking to people right now. I'll be the first one and probably the only one that'll stand up here and tell you that I need to learn more, much more. And I need you, as well as the teachers, the other board members, to teach me, educate me, talk to me. Don't be afraid to come to me, please, because I need to know what you know, the issues that you have. That's the only way I'll get better. It's the only way I can better serve you. Thank you.
Next to the podium, Mr. Johnson.
The areas I've researched is the lack of a strong special education department. I spoke with a former NLCS employee of 24 and a half years, and she taught me a lot about special education that I didn't know, and to be quite honest, I didn't know a lot. But it kind of lit a fire in my heart. The next day I actually started in-source training, which is volunteer training for special needs, special education, to let me understand how to serve those with special needs and to give them the education that they deserve.
Next to the podium, Mr. Parsley.
I have dug deep since deciding to run for school board. You've heard me talk about the 3 online polls I've conducted of teachers, former teachers, and community members. I've looked at enrollment data and trends, become a fairly familiar user with all the IDOE data center. I've looked at item scores, where we're about 2 to 4% below the state. I've read every policy and administrative guideline on board docs. I've read the governor's 1920 task force on teacher pay. I have looked at all the stats I can find on where Indiana, where individual even salaries are within this school corporation. So I am very data centric, and I am still digging for numbers. I am still learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Patton.
So special education is one of them. I mean, they've done away with it. Trying to figure out how to get it restarted again is going to be fun. The other thing is I'm a numbers guy. So I went through their credit cards that somebody posted for me, or posted online. I mean, $10,000 is what they spent at McAllister's and Papa John's and other restaurants around Bedford just between 2021 and 2022. $26,000 for prom. Cigar City, $251. In Tampa, Florida. New Orleans Craft Tavern, $424. In 2 years, just random stuff on the credit card equals $102,000. Where did it all go?
Next to the podium, Mr. Fleetwood.
Research. I've talked to a lot of teachers, a lot of custodians, a lot of maintenance men. Like I said, I worked here for 30-some years. I know every building, every inch of every building in the school system. I can tell you everything about them. I've worked at every one of them. If I'm elected, I'll make sure that every teacher, student get what they need. And bottom is, happy teachers, happy students. Thank you.
Next to the podium, Mr. Hooten.
I researched teachers particularly, researched as a leader at Crane, who runs an organization. Climate and culture is huge, and I've spent a lot of time on that. And I think the lack of metrics and goals goes along with that climate and culture. The North Lawrence Economic Growth Council, I spoke with two members there about the adult education programs. I've researched the referendum that Monroe County Community School does, and that's one of the ways that they increase teacher salaries. Special education, high ability. Our students who are high ability shouldn't have to go to summer school to be educated in a high ability manner. I researched the board docs, and I've also read all the previous studies from 20 years ago and 10 years ago. And I'm very data oriented and will make decisions based on the data.
Next to the podium, Mr. King.
I'd like to start by saying that I am available to anyone who wants to meet, talk about any issues. I've talked to many teachers, current teachers, former teachers, elementary teachers, middle school teachers, high school teachers, career center teachers, special ed teachers. I've researched other school systems, especially in terms of special ed and high ability. I've engaged with the community both in person and on social media. I've reviewed school budgets. I've looked at every NLCS policy on board docs. I've been involved with school board meetings since 2019. I've had many discussions with the superintendent and school board meeting both before, during, and after the consolidation. I've attended every public meeting this year except one because I was recovering from surgery. I spoke in public meetings twice.
Thank you. Mr. Payne, you're next.
I've researched the data that's online for our school corporation. I've looked at our policies. I've read state law. But I don't know that any of that research is going to do us any good with the state that our school corporation is in right now. So I think that there's going to be a lot more research that will need to be had as we move forward and make decisions to make changes.
Thank you. Mrs. Ray, you're next.
I've talked to a lot of teachers and support staff, and I've listened. I'm involved with a lot of students and parents through my Touchdown Club for football, and I've listened to all of their needs and expectations. I taught 23 years of preschoolers that are going through our system now, and I care about their futures. I was previously on the school board with the last administration, so I feel like I'm aware of things that are going on, aware of things that needed to happen and have happened. I'm a good listener, and I genuinely care about our teachers and our kids. And I feel like I would be very good on the school board because I care, and I'm just genuine, so.
Thank you. Last to answer question 12, Dr. Gerges.
I've talked to many teachers over the course of the last 4 years, trying to see what we can do to best improve morale and best improve communication between the teachers and ourselves, and try to bring us into some source of cohesiveness so that we can come to an agreement about what would be best for our kids and also what's best for our teachers. The next thing is, I've spent some time looking over budgets, not just our budget, but budgets of other school systems to see kind of where we fare with that, so I can get an understanding if we're overspending or underspending in certain regions. Other things that research involve inclusion. We need to be better at including kids and staff members who aren't mainstream as we see in Southern Indiana, and that's something important, especially in our upcoming future. Beyond that, looking also at salary reviews. We've done that on a regular basis to try and get our teachers to where they need to be, where their salaries balanced out with those around us.
Thank you. Now we'll move to our closing remarks. Each candidate will have 1 minute to conclude the forum. We will start with Mrs. Collier from District 1.
I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight. I'd like to thank the NLEA for hosting this event and inviting every candidate to attend. I feel like I'm the best candidate for this District 1. I have the experience and dedication it takes to be a board member, and it's been an honor serving the last 9 years. I want to continue serving to ensure our teachers and staff are supported and our kids are safe and provided the best educational opportunities. As a public servant, I devoted 19 years of my career serving the children and families in this community and working with our school. I've always done what's in the kids' best interest, and I've always brought that same philosophy to the table when making decisions on the school board. If reelected, I'll continue to put our kids first. Most importantly, I'm a mom. I've got a child in NLCS, and board decisions affect me and my family personally. I've had to make tough decisions, and I've shown I'm not afraid to go against the grain and vote for what is best for our kids and our community. I will continue to fight to do what's best for our kids. There's been a lot of controversy and negativity surrounding the board, and everyone has different reasons for running, but we cannot lose sight of the big picture. The reason everyone should want this job, it should be about the kids in our community and making sure they have the best opportunities to achieve academic success. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Next, also representing District 1, Craig Godson.
So, closing, I think we need a fresh face. Not only for my district, but majority of the board. Bring new ideas in. There's so much fear, not only from teachers, students, parents, everything. We need a fresh start. We almost need to completely dismantle that administration building, start over. Who do you want to start with? Somebody who's been there and been part of it, or do you want to start fresh? I think we need to start fresh. New ideas. Humble. Please teach me. Tell me your issues. Tell me what you need. I need to talk to as many of you as possible, not just from my district, but the entire corporation. Your issues will not be brought forth in front of the board unless you tell somebody about it. If nobody else will, I will. Come talk to me. I'll be your representative. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Johnson.
First of all, I'd like to thank the NLEA for hosting this and everybody coming out to hear us speak. I'm running for a few reasons. I'll name a few here. Transparency. Nothing should stay hidden as especially when it comes to the future of our kids. Two, to build trust through honesty. To seek better pay for teachers and staff. To offer a better educational experience and more opportunities for the students. I'm going to be honest, I don't have all the answers. I don't think any of us do. But my promise is that I will dedicate everything I have to find out those answers that you asked, or for the questions that you asked, and to be as transparent as I can be.
Thank you. Next to the microphone will be Mr. Parsley.
I'm running for NLCS School Board because I want to be a part of the positive change that is desperately needed. I want to focus on three things: our leadership and climate. I want to be student-centric by being teacher-centric. And I think we desperately need long-term strategic planning and short-term objectives and goals, and then the transparency and the communication that it takes to heal this community and this school board. I want a healthy, thriving corporation for my own kids, for this community's kids, a place that families, employees can be proud to report to every day. I want to be ahead above the rest. I've made hard decisions in my career at Crane. I'm willing to make hard decisions here, and this is not going to be fun, this is not going to be easy. But I think we've got a duty to this community as the future board to make sure that we do what it takes to be ahead above the rest. Thank you very much.
Next to the microphone, Mr. Patton.
So, seeing the mess that North Lawrence is in, the past 20 years I've worked in 7 different stores. They would send me in to fix it, to make it run right. If elected to school board, the first thing I have to do is figure out what the problems are. Sometimes you got to take the puzzle apart and then put it back together the right way. And it's difficult, but it can be done. I mean, I've done it numerous times. Takes work, dedication, long hours, and you have to, sometimes you have to be the bad guy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone, Mr. Fleetwood from District 3.
First thing, I'd like to thank for everybody being here tonight, all the people here in the audience, all the candidates. This is how I feel. I think we need somebody in there to stop the crap that's going on in there with the superintendent. I don't like what he's doing in Springville. The stories I've heard, I think pretty well that's the reason why I'm running, for get something done for our teachers, our support staff, our custodians, maintenance. I've done it all, and I'm here to help them to get their money, what they deserve. Board members don't know what they go through. I do. Been there and seen it. They need to get out there and see it. They wouldn't do what these custodians do to make the money they do. They wouldn't do it. So I'm here to run for District 3. I hope I get elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the microphone will be Mr. Hoot.
Thank you again for hosting and attending. I believe I'm the best candidate for District 3, one, because of my education. I hold 3 associate's degree and 2 bachelor's degree in STEM education. I also have an MBA, by far the best out of any of the candidates. I have the most leadership experience. I've managed a 50-person organization at NSWC Crane. I've managed funding for billions of dollars at that organization. I have the most data-driven decision-making experience of anybody in District 3 as well. The other thing that I want to mention, for me, this is community service. It isn't about a paycheck, or it's about doing what's best for the community. So I'm going to donate all of my salary to scholarships, whether that be current scholarships or existing ones that I create. I want your vote. I need your vote. A vote for Ty Newton is a vote for positive change. It's a vote for transparency, and it's a vote for accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to the podium will be Mr. King.
What would you say if you're approached by a new hire in Crane looking for a place to settle with his family, and he said, I've talked to folks in Wilmington, Mitchell, and Orleans about their school system and why I should send my children there. Tell me about NLCS. How would you answer? If you were truthful, you'd have to include this information. In the past 3 years, our student enrollment has dropped nearly 20%. The turnover rate for our teachers is nearly 50%. Our special education program has been decimated. Our county has 2 new charter schools. Salaries and benefits are too low. There is a complete lack of trust between the school board, the administration, and the community. This is not a story I want to share with a new potential Lawrence County resident, and neither should you. Elect me to the school board, and I guarantee you that story will be a thing of the past. We can start telling a new story. One of a new direction, one of growth and cooperation, one of quality and success, and one that we can all be proud to share.
Thank you. Next to the podium, Mr. Robert Payne.
I'm running for school board because I'm concerned. I have 2 children in the school system, and I want to make sure that they get the best education possible. I think that a community that's together, cohesive, shows strength. And with the addition of the 2 charter schools, people have spoken, and they've separated. So we're not strong anymore. I'd like to see that rectified, and I'd like to bring it back together as one school corporation for the northern part of this county.
Thank you. Next to the podium is Mrs. Spray.
I want to thank you all for having us tonight. I believe that I've had a lot of experience with our children as a preschool teacher laying their foundation. I want to do what's best for our students, teachers, and support staff as far as giving them raises and giving them better benefits. I want NLCS to be the best it's ever been, with the most opportunities. Our community needs encouragement and a well-established school system. I want unity in our school system and healing. I want parents and students to be proud of NLCS. If I am voted in, I will work hard to be honest and listen to the parents and their worries, and I will do all I can to make that happen.
Next to the podium, Dr. Qualcourt.
I poured the last 25 years of my life in this community, serving the community in the medical profession. And of all the decisions I make, the last 4 years have probably been the most difficult in my life in terms of the decisions and things that we've had to deal with. The community needs to heal, and part of it needs to start from the board. And at this point, I think it's our job, my job, to try and help bring unity to the community. At the same time, bring trust to from the board. It is something that has happened. I've not made all the decisions I've made with my heart. I've made them in the best interest of the teachers and students in my heart. Sometimes they're not always right. We learn from those mistakes. And I can tell you that I'm not a yes man. I never have been a yes man. But the direction of the school needs to change. The school system. We need to grow. We need to offer our kids the best education, the best options, and the best opportunities we can give them. And in part, we also need to bring in the best teachers, provide them the best salaries, give them a comfortable and peaceful environment to work in, and a place that they can call home.
Thank you. Now coming to the microphone, Ms. Barbara Miller.
people get elected from this stage have a big job ahead. But I will go out and build relationships with the community, with the staff, with the teachers, with the students. I'm for transparency, smaller class sizes, especially in the primary grades, and of course, competitive teacher-staff salaries. I want to restore openness and trust between the community and the school board. We have to take care of our kids. We have kids who attended Springville as 5th graders, Needmore as 6th graders, OMS in 7th grade, BMS as 8th graders this year, and next year will be 9th graders. That's not fair to them, not fair to their families. We have to take care of them. We have to rebuild our special education system. It is broke, it needs fixed. Consolidation caused a mass exodus of students and teachers. We need to figure that out and get them back. We have coexisted with St. Vincent for many, many, many years. We need to figure that out with LCS and SCA.
Thank you. Just a reminder as we wind down tonight that the election will be held coming up on Tuesday, November the 8th at your local polling stations from across the county. We'd like to give a big shout out to Mr. Black back here in the sound booth for taking care of us tonight. Also, we'd like to thank the Career Center Productions team here that has been putting this out on live feed and letting people in the community that weren't able to be here with us see that. So big shout out to those students in radio and TV class, and also North Lawrence for allowing us to use the PAC tonight, and our NLEA members for coming out doing timing and running the screens and all that fun stuff. But thank you to everyone that's running. I know not everybody can win, but I think you showed tonight that you guys, you have heart for doing this and your varied reasons for running. So thank you very much, and thank everybody. Have a great night.